Got so much in common.
Depression, self-loathing.
And he knows we can't have a physical thing because I don't do this anymore.
I'm still hoping you'll change your mind.
I won't. But you see, it's also exciting.
Right.
He wants me.
I do.
And he can never have me.
I'm hopeful.
It's just perfect, isn't it?
As humans, we're all searching for that perfect match. The Bonnie to your Clyde, the Cleopatra to your Mark Anthony, the Zendaya to your Tom Holland. Yet more often than not, this ideal is an illusion, and when we can't find it, we end up constructing it from someone else. That pressure to force a square peg into a round hole inevitably causes cracks, both in our expectations and in the people we try to mold to our fantasy. Cassie Ainsworth emerges as our slightly skewed rhombus in this narrative, introduced as the girl designed to fill Michelle's place in the love center of Sid's mind. Unlike Michelle, Cassie carries an immediate complexity that captivates us with her quirks and oddities, even though we first hear about her rather than see her.
Alright. Who's stupid enough to fuck Sid?
Cassie?
She's still in hospital.
No, she's not. They let her out. She's just not allowed to handle knives.
Alright, she'll do.
Whispered rumors of a sexual reputation, as long as she's not hungry, mark her as Sid's perfect girl from Tony and Michelle. But this is only one side of the tale of two Cassies. In my previous video, I compared Michelle with her Euphoria counterpart, Maddie.
Do you think my areolas look weird?
Stop calling me Nips,
Tony.
It's a funny name.
Noting how these shows, despite being over a decade apart, create entirely different playgrounds for their characters. Once I dove into Cassie Howard's storyline, I found myself down a rabbit hole that felt as wild and conspiratorial as it was revealing. In Euphoria, Cassie Howard is introduced as Ruth's friend Lexi's older sister, a character with a notorious reputation for leaked nudes, who nevertheless becomes the ideal girlfriend for college freshman and high school football star Chris McKay, who sees beyond her past. Despite coming from different worlds, both Cassies depend on external validation and become entangled in manipulative, emotionally negligent, secret-filled relationships that erode their agency. Their journeys, rooted in the tragic yet alluring archetype of the Manic Pixie dream girl, remind us that true healing comes from reclaiming an authentic self rather than clinging to an idealized projection. Long before shows like Skins and Euphoria, women were depicted as tragic figures defined by their need for rescue and external validation, as seen in Romeo and Juliet, where Juliet's role completes Romeo and his hysterical reaction to her presumed death is celebrated as tragic romance, even though her downfall stems from an unrealized, youthful fantasy of love. Over time, this romantic tragedy evolved into modern stereotypes of the crazy or hysterical woman,
an uncontrollable, dangerous woman who's often equal parts mesmerizing and terrifying. Mental illness is a difficult topic to portray accurately in stories written for entertainment,
where acts once viewed as passionate are now pathologized, and genres like horror and comedy embrace these characters, while the dead girl trope, exemplified by Twin Peaks' Laura Palmer, transforms a woman into an enigmatic myth onto which others project their own narratives. From this blending emerges the mentally unwell girl, always teetering on the brinks of collapse, yet never fully dying, her lure rooted in volatile instability. This archetype was mainstreamed in the late 1990s with Girl Interrupted, where icons like Winona Ryder and Angelina Jolie portrayed attractive young women labeled mentally ill amid the stigma of early psychiatric treatments. In the film, Susanna's ambiguous suicide attempt is explained away by her local doctor, who claims she's hurting everyone and doesn't pay her issues much attention, since she supposedly comes from a good family. When it is revealed she is being sexually pressured by her parents' friend, this sexual exploitation ruins her reputation, and Susanna is forced to sign into a mental hospital, confronting the label suicidal and slightly promiscuous. Though she protests only the notion that she is suicidal and overall mentally ill, in a way acknowledging that she accepts her sexuality labeled this way. However, in the relationship we see Susanna in, she remarks that she thinks about her death, making the boy uncomfortable, and she even decides to stay in the mental hospital when she is offered an opportunity to escape with him. Susanna soon comes to terms about her life and finds her sense of self through this journey towards independence. However, her constant doubt of whether she was ever even mentally ill leaves the audience with the ambiguity of whether she was ever truly mentally unwell or just a hormonal teenager, or both.
We decided to push the idea that you can just stop being crazy if you really want to. Don't mind that mental illness that makes it difficult for you to go through life. Just stop. That's why a lot of critics saw the story as just an annoying little girl being difficult. Lisa Loomer explained, quote, "When I say the script became more dramatic, I think you could also characterize that as more of a male take. It became a more aggressive film. It would be a very different film, for instance, if Greta Gerwig were handling that same material today. I'm not saying better or worse, I'm just saying different. I certainly felt that what I wrote was very much faithful to the themes and questions of the book."
Opposing end of the spectrum, in 2000, the Virgin Suicides portrayed mental illness with a mystical allure, transforming vulnerability into an enigmatic, romanticized mystique. Told from the perspective of neighborhood boys who saw the Lisbon sisters as untouchable, dreamlike goddesses, the film allowed them to construct unattainable fantasies about these mysterious, tragic figures. Even with its sanitized title and cinematography, masking the grim reality of the girls from picture perfect families committing suicide. For these boys, such experiences were life altering, marking a forced journey into adulthood. This portrayal underscores a recurring pattern. Mentally unwell girls and women are depicted with an expiration. They either evolve into normality, as with Susanna, or vanish into myth, as with the Lisbon sisters. Also in 2000, Almost Famous offered a more lighthearted, less manic yet similarly idealized depiction of this mystical girl, with Penny Lane entrusting her and the Band-Aids a peripheral role in these male fantasies of the band members. From classical tales like Romeo and Juliet to films like Girl Interrupted, The Virgin Suicides, and even Almost Famous's iconic Penny Lane, these young women's identities are persistently validated by narrow Western beauty standards, white, thin, and petite, and repeatedly shown as escaping toxic family dynamics to become, even if fleetingly, symbols of unattainable ideality. In 2003, 13 updated the archetype of the mentally unwell girl by exploring how toxic family dynamics can stifle self-discovery and breed mental illness. The film follows Tracy Freeland, portrayed by Evan Rachel Wood, who begins as a typical good girl before gradually descending into rebellion and depression as she tries to fit in with her new friend, Evie Zamora. Tracy's transformation from her relatable anxiety and her self-harming tendencies to her embrace of a reckless persona is fueled by parental neglect from her father and mother, and her mother's toxic relationship, which creates a fractured home environment. Unlike other films where the mentally ill girl's illness is a pre-existing condition, 13 gives Tracy the space to be herself before her inner turmoil takes over, a nuanced approach enriched by the writers Catherine Hardwicke and a teenage Nikki Reed, who went on to play Evie.
First meet Tracy, everything she is in the end of the film is what she keeps bottled up inside in the beginnings.
Meanwhile, later films offer alternative adult takes of the trope. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind in 2004 subverts the archetype by presenting Clementine with self-aware complexity beyond that of a mere love interest, while the 2006 biopic Factory Girl is an exploration of Warhol muse Edie Sedgwick, played by Sienna Miller. Despite its critical flaws, Factory Girl underscores Edie's cultural impact as a damaged beauty, a figure molded by early institutionalization and a tragic overdose at 28. In one memorable scene, just after Andy Warhol meets Edie, another character asks, "What did I tell you? She's a star or what?" And Andy replies, "Oh, I would sure love to work with her. I've never seen a girl with so many problems." This moment encapsulates how such young troubled women are transformed into mythic projections rather than fully rounded individuals, highlighting a recurring cultural pattern that both idealizes and diminishes their existence.
Cassie is a girl who's got a lot of problems. She's definitely got an eating disorder. That's kind of one of her main issues. And then she's also got this really horrible home life where her parents are having sex all over the place and painting each other naked, and they're really focused on their new baby, Reuben. So she's sort of a bit neglected at home.
And wanting love, really, and there's a lot of unrequited love going on in the show, and she's kind of the one that I think's affected most by it all.
Beginning of the show, Cassie Ainsworth is introduced as the one girl crazy enough to have sex with Sid, immediately objectifying her and showing that her friends know that she has a desperate need to please despite what might be in her best interest. Raised in a picture-perfect family, Cassie learns early on to suppress her feelings in order not to disrupt harmony. She doesn't feel like she fits in with her family, which leads her to lean more on her friends, but more importantly, her crush on Sid. Her interactions with Sid, buying him a beer while he ignores her, or enduring his weird comments about his crush on Michelle, reflect a pattern of self-silencing like she does with her parents. Her parents are emotionally absent even during her most critical moments.
A taxi's here.
Taxi?
They send it from the clinic to make sure I go.
Yes, of course.
They're signing her off, darling.
We knew you'd make it through. Oh, wonderful! And don't forget to say thank you.
Oh, I will. Totally.
Purple. I'm thinking purple.
Cassie's extreme focus on her appearance due to her eating disorder serves as a substitute for her internal self-worth. This leads her to hide and move food around, constantly obsessing over eating to the point of hallucinating. Yet no one really says anything, but Sid, giving her a glimmer of hope that someone cares for her. However, Sid is emotionally negligent with Cassie's feelings and pays her no attention, despite her eagerness to be with him. The show portrays this as the main cause of Cassie attempting suicide by overdosing, which makes her fate tied to this fantasy of her being with Sid. It's similar to Juliet that her love for this boy is too strong, and if his stupidity ruins her chances with him, then she must die too. However, as a main character, Cassie lives after getting her stomach pumped, and this becomes the catalyst for Sid's evolution. It also causes him to start to pursue Cassie, but now she is in the mental hospital and they can't be together. Back to Romeo and Juliet here. This classic will they or won't they relies on Cassie to continue chasing after Sid anytime he shows her the slightest bit of attention. It also relies on Michelle, the person who introduced Cassie to Sid, to be on the opposing end or be seen as the more desirable one. Just looking back, we can see this with Girl Interrupted in 13, for the Manic Pixie Dream Girl to not fall more into that attractive, popular girl trope, she has to have a counterpart who is deemed more sexually confident. Unlike Girl Interrupted in 13, Michelle and Cassie are rarely allowed to be seen having meaningful moments with one another, as they are always at opposing ends of Sid's affections, leaving no time for the relationship to develop past this love triangle. Again, having more women as lead writers can help with this. We see this with 13, but also with Girl Interrupted, which was developed from a woman's memoir into a screenplay by not only the film's director, James Mangold, but also by writers Lisa Loomer and Anna Hamilton Phelan. Eventually, Cassie moves away to Scotland with her family, and Sid is then seen spending all his time longing for her, despite not wanting her when she was right there. Like, if Cassie never tried to kill herself over Sid, would he have still wanted her? Cassie loses her authenticity as a person and becomes more of a projection for Sid's new romantic fantasy. When she's away in Scotland, Sid believes she is cheating on him and uses this as a reason to sleep with Michelle. Once Cassie finds out, she starts acting out and uses this as a reason to be sexually promiscuous and mean-spirited.
Angie's back. He's seen her. I've had my pain, Dal. Yours is in the post.
It's once again following this Romeo and Juliet design, with the boy doing something stupid because he convinces himself a girl has done something stupid, which then causes the girl to do something stupid in reaction to the boy doing something stupid. Similar to Michelle and Tony, once Cassie and Sid are over, Cassie just becomes bitter, and we never get to see her find solace anywhere. She's then constantly moving from place to place, mad at the world. We don't know if Cassie's eating anymore, or if it even matters, because she's now just a girl sleeping around because she's mad at a boy. Once Effie gets them back together, Cassie and Sid's relationship quickly causes Cassie to turn against it, due to her still not being happy despite now being in a relationship. Cassie grew up in a two-parent household with parents who were very much in love, so it's understandable as to why Cassie's now seeking this type of love in another person. But by creating this fantasy out of Sid, especially while he's still grieving the loss of his father, Cassie sets herself up for her failure when she realizes just being with Sid isn't enough to make her happy. She still feels spiteful against Michelle, and her mental health hasn't improved like she had hoped. On top of that, not only hiding her own secrets while in the midst of her eating disorder, Cassie is also holding everyone else's secrets, whether it's Chris's illness or Giles' pregnancy, and it is stressing her out even more. She loses all sense of her autonomy, going from an outsider to now being a confidant for so many people in her life.
Please don't tell Cass.
Secrets hurt.
It's only a matter of time before you and Chris know everything about each other, Jal. And there's a lot of secrets out there.
Once Chris dies, the trauma from it causes this version of Cassie to die along with him, as she realizes happiness is fleeting and nothing happy can last. She even tells Sid that she loves him and that's the problem, noting that love is not good enough for her because something will eventually go wrong. And by tricking her way out of the mental hospital, Cassie never successfully learned how to cope with disappointment. So to avoid the sadness of Chris's funeral and having to face everyone, Cassie just flees to New York City, not saying goodbye to Sid or anyone, as if she existed in the happiness of Chris being alive, and now that he was dead, she had to go. In New York City, Cassie has her guard up, sets boundaries, but learns to accept that fleeting moments of kindness and love can help people survive, as she does off of the taxi driver giving her a free ride and money to eat, along with Adam, a sympathetic stranger who lets Cassie stay at his apartment for nothing in return. Her sexuality isn't being taken advantage of, and she can finally rest, to which she sleeps for 2 days straight. Cassie had never experienced kindness without having to do something in return, whether it is suppressing her feelings to keep her parents happy, or Michelle inviting her to a party to sleep with Sid. People usually want something out of Cassie. Experiencing someone like Adam, who becomes her own manic pixie dream boy, gives Cassie a taste of the effect she has on others when she pops in and out of the lives of the people she cares for, allowing her to not only understand herself better, but to see the same way she had the ability to make others feel good, she has the ability to make herself feel good. She finally eats the green apple Adam left for her, which opposes the red apple she refused to eat in the first season, then runs into her last big scene, not running away from anything, but running as a sign of life and health. She finally is shown making peace with herself as she takes a bite out of the apple, both literally and metaphorically. This ending for Cassie clearly does prove some evolution, as she's now trying to better herself, but I also see the symbolism in it as well. Here we have Cassie, a 2000s era manic pixie dream girl, finally submitting to the realities of life and accepting that things will always go wrong, but deciding to live anyways, which feels slightly biblical in a way. I mean, the guy's name is Adam, and he leaves her an apple, which is just biblical enough already, but even outside that, Cassie resembles Eve sneaking into the garden and eating the apple the snake convinced her to eat, seemingly tempting her Adam to come and eat the same forbidden fruit, which resembles Sid going to New York and finding Cassie, which he wouldn't have done if she hadn't gone there in the first place. It's like Cassie was finally able to accept her actions for herself, and now with Sid coming back into the picture, she's forced to unmesh her destiny despite him still viewing her as his perfect girl. As many of you know, there was a 7th and final season of Skins in 2013 that continued with Cassie's story, in which she becomes a model. Her storyline was titled Skins Pure, positioning Cassie as pure and innocent, aligning her with her manic pixie dream girl representation. Cassie is a beloved character and helps so many young people learn how to accept their quirks and embrace their eccentricities in a new and vulnerable way. However, as a mainstream portrayal of a girl with an eating disorder, Cassie's character in retrospect comes across as short-sighted and sometimes harmful, as they constantly downplay the effects of her mental illness for comedic value and aesthetic stylization, often depicting her issues as personality and not a mere aspect of her personhood.
Show's producers described how they campaigned against the announcement of any counselling helplines at the credits, because they said they don't want a preachy little drama where everyone hugs at the end. And instead, the producers hoped that people would find their own faults with Cassie. People are very susceptible to restriction, and when it's shown on TV with these tips, people aren't going to just be able to recognise our own faults, especially when she's so beautiful and cool. A lot of her character is positive, you know, she's like a fairy, she's beautiful, she's clever, she's funny, she's quirky, she's like a manic pixie dream girl. Watching it now, I'm like, she's very fucked up and annoying, and I see all these faults with her.
In this later version of her character, Cassie's now in her early 20s and is a waitress in London. She's seen as a struggling young adult with regular problems, but not as obviously mentally ill as she was portrayed prior. In Skins Pure, Cassie becomes the manic pixie dream girl of her co-worker, Jacob, and he basically stalks her and takes pictures of her while she's at home in her room, not only invading her privacy, but also posting the pictures online. But the attention from people causes her to accept it and continue to allow the guy to take pictures. So she now goes from being this fantasy for this one guy into being this fantasy for many. This leads to her and Jacob getting into a relationship, despite him saying his photos were purely art and were not driven by anything sexual in the beginning. Things get more messy when she starts sleeping with another coworker, being this manic pixie dream girl for all the men in her life.
We have to remember something good. You're right. Everything matters.
Cassie! It's okay, that's it. It's finished. That's all we get.
Cassie's story closes with her winding up taking care of her dad and brother in London, which gives Cassie the family she was always looking for in others. I appreciate that it at least grounds her within her family, similar to Tracy in 13, allowing her to mend her feelings of isolation and finally feel a part of her family like she always wanted. The only thing that is a little sus is her mom having to die for her to fill in this role in a way for her little brother and father. Speaking of this trope of the oldest girl replacing the mother when she's unavailable, Cassie was put in this role when she was younger, and here she is in the same role in her 20s. We can see this trope on an extreme level in both the UK and US depiction of Shameless, where the eldest sister Fiona is left to raise all her younger siblings and take care of her father. Another depiction of this older sister trope is Rae from My Mad Fat Diary. They don't really show much of her with her baby sister, but I think they do a good job on the part before you become an older sibling, especially as an only child that's a teenager, and then having to mentally prepare yourself to have to help out. I actually think if we would have seen more of Cassie's home life while her mom was pregnant, I feel like her and Rae would be really similar characters, as they both struggle with not fitting in with their friends and family, eating disorders, mental health challenges, self-harm, and suicide. I even think with their relationships with Cassie and Sid being similar to Rae and Finn, in that Sid wanted to see the best in Cassie despite her struggles, like Finn wanted to see the best in Rae despite her struggles. They also were able to show TV depictions of teenage girls in the mental hospital and dealing with real issues. However, because Rae doesn't fit the superficial ideals of the manic pixie dream girl, she is relegated into the fat girl trope instead of the one that appropriately aligns with her actual character traits. This is a great way to bring us into the next Cassie.
Cassie's father left when she was growing up, and she lost this man that she looked at as a superhero, and so she's always looked for that kind of love to replace. And Cassie feels like she needs these men to tell her she's beautiful or make her feel like she has to accept herself. You watch all these movies and TV shows, and your idea of what teenage love is supposed to be, and that's not what it is in her life, and she's searching for what she is expecting it to be.
Cassie Howard is fascinating to try to understand, not only to her sister Lexi, but to everyone around her. Growing up in a volatile, unstable home with conflict and neglect due to her parents' unstable relationship, Cassie learns to depend on external validation once she realizes how sexual attention works and what it can do for her sense of self-worth. Cassie's older male relatives always saying she's going to be a heartbreaker subconsciously grooms her to be this male fantasy in the future. When her parents split, Cassie's told a secret that her mom cheated on her dad. Her parents both spiral and her dad gets into an almost fatal car accident. Cassie then takes care of him while also making sure her sister and mom are okay. Her dad's addiction gets worse, and Cassie lets him into the house to let him steal to pay for his heroin habit. This also is heightened when we see that Cassie also made her sister get into the car with her drunk dad because Cassie didn't want to be seen as rude and lose her dad's trust. Cassie's rightful dependence on her dad allowed her to overlook not only her own safety and her father's, but her sister's as well. This need to please, regardless of the consequences, demonstrates Cassie's early people-pleasing. She may know something is wrong, but she values trust over honesty. This allows her to have her closest relationships and shapes her identity. This new role intensifies her sensitivity from trauma and overall chronic depression. With all that being said about Cassie's backstory, this is all information we find throughout the series. We are not initially provided all this when we see Cassie, but what we do know is that she's dating Chris McKay now. Cassie, as an attractive blonde American girl, should fit within the pretty girl trope that her counterpart and best friend Maddie finds herself in. However, where Maddie is naturally confident and self-assured, Cassie is written to be more innocent and emotional. We don't know if she's depressed, so it's easy to write her issues in favor of the other characters. In a relationship with McKay, Cassie's given a level of control, but as McKay's manhood is questioned by those around him, Cassie often finds herself in the position to help him, whether it benefits her or not. This can be seen when things are good, like when Cassie helps McKay to do the goldfish shot and look cool in front of his frat brothers, or when things are bad, like when McKay is sexually assaulted in front of Cassie, then takes it out on her through degrading sex. However, we have seen Cassie stand up for herself when McKay tries to choke her during sex, and they have to talk about consent. A+ scene, by the way, in terms of the consent talk. It's a little graphic, but it serves a point. Unfortunately, like Cassie from Skins, this Cassie also has a reputation that follows her around because of her leaked nudes. Like in the first episode, Cassie's presented as promiscuous, but now McKay, who is seen as the golden boy, by dating her, he almost saves her reputation in a way, showing that she can still be loved despite her flaws. I think in the first season, Cassie started off as the perfect girl in McKay's eyes, but as he got to know her more, he realized she isn't perfect like he thought. But regardless, this doesn't stop Cassie from transforming into anyone McKay needs her to be, from him pressuring her into sending him nudes, or him forcing her to cover up her Halloween costume because it made him uncomfortable. This starts to get to Cassie as she feels her sense of autonomy start to slip, and she gets worried. Again, Cassie is a people pleaser, and so once McKay refuses to claim Cassie in front of Nate, she finds herself pleasing those in her proximity at high school and getting away with it. This causes Cassie to cheat on McKay with Daniel. Daniel doesn't even know Cassie, but after she embarrasses herself on the carousel, Daniel feels like he can use this shame to his advantage. When Cassie hooks up with Daniel because she's mad at McKay, Daniel wields her reputation against her and degrades her for ruining his sexual fantasy of her. This situation shows that even though she falters in her relationship with McKay, Cassie's still able to set her boundaries and stand up for herself with Daniel. However, when she gets home, she cries, drinking her mom's wine as she resembles her own mother, reinforcing how the family unit tends to disrupt the Manic Pixie dream girl, whether it be seemingly idyllic like Cassie from Skins, or if it's broken like Cassie from Euphoria's. The point is their parents disappointed them through their actions, so to end up like them would be a disappointment. At this point, Cassie is also holding a lot of secrets, whether it be her family secrets or those of her friends. So she starts to feel overwhelmed managing all of them and keeping all her friends happy, despite not feeling happy inside. It only gets worse when Cassie finds out she's pregnant and has to tell McKay, who wants her to get an abortion. Cassie doesn't fight McKay and tells him she wants to live in the fantasy of them having a baby, as she questions if it is her fate. I think this shows that Cassie is so used to things happening to her that she has trouble interfering in her own life and making the best decision for herself. McKay, being a black college athlete, immediately understands the implications of him having a child with Cassie and tells her she has to get an abortion. Cassie goes to the abortion clinic with her mom and sister, and we learn directly that she has been suffering through depression and that her parents have also been suffering from depression and substance abuse. This is the last episode of the first season, leaving Cassie's fantasy of being in the perfect relationship ruined, and Cassie Howard, like Cassie Ainsworth, becomes bitter about love.
I feel like love is super dark and no one ever talks about it.
Yeah, but that might be specific to their kind of love.
I think despite Cassie's development being so tied to McKay's, backed his and her character into corners that were fairly stereotypical, but there are signs of Cassie's strength throughout season 1, so you can make the excuse to not immediately write her off. They set up her character in a way where you believe she will finally understand her independence and learn to love herself more, but nah, they said fuck it. Cassie just starts to act very dumb, like declaring her independence.
I'm just trying to focus on myself.
Why?
Because I keep making mistakes and not learning from them.
Then 5 minutes later, sleeping with her best friend's abusive ex-boyfriend who used to make fun of her and degrade her to everyone. This gives some evidence that the Manic Pixie Dream Girl is a romanticized figure, and her own person isn't a consideration as long as she can serve a broken boy or man's development. Cassie is seen from this point on as being a character in service of Nate's own narrative, while also reducing her character down to her mental illness. Their other partners, Cassie begins by asserting boundaries, but eventually succumbing to accepting abuse, while with Nate, the boundaries are non-existent and she completely loses her agency, conflicting between idealized intimacy and abuse. They also show this with Cassie making all her initial bad decisions when she's under the influence of drugs or alcohol, further showing how she mirrors her parents and their bad decisions due to substance abuse. Fueling this cycle that has encumbered her whole family, Cassie becomes the perfect girl for Nate, even going as far as to copy her best friend's look. Like Sid ignored Cassie Ainsworth, Nate ignores Cassie Howard. Both Cassies then fixate on their parents to attract their crushes, who have shown them no to little interest. When Nate does pay attention to Cassie, it's only after she dresses like Maddie. Once he gets beat up at the party, Nate suddenly decides that Cassie is the girl for him and projects his fantasy onto her as she projects the same onto him.
No, you deserve someone who's passionate and loving, who yearns for you and can't wait to see you, who you're not gonna fight with and just gonna love you, like really truly love you.
Nate blames Maddie for his problems and suggests that if he went out with Cassie, she would have brought out the best in him. Nate, also chasing Cassie through this unfinished suburb and then into the framework of an unfinished house, actualizes this fantasy of a future with Cassie into real life, as these unfinished houses represent the potential to build a family and fill out a house like it. But unlike Sid from Skins, Nate is more intentionally manipulative and vicious. He sees Cassie outside the gas station and preys on her vulnerability, but in the same vein, Cassie, being a people pleaser, relinquishes her autonomy to Nate's word, creating this new total submissive state for Cassie, a switch from her other relationships where we saw her attempt to maintain control. Nate likes to scare Cassie, then show her love, pushing her away as he then pulls her back in. He even brings up how mad Maddie will be at Cassie when they are hooking up and takes pleasure in it. Nate revels in this back and forth, leaving Cassie trapped in this manic depressive state, yo-yoing with her emotions to keep her psychologically bound to him. Being isolated by her relationship with Nate and the lies it requires, her friends start to not recognize her, signifying her transformation into an object molded to satisfy Nate's fantasies. Even Nate confronts McKay in a way of establishing dominance over Cassie's body. When it's Maddie's birthday, Cassie cannot handle the attention that Nate is giving Maddie at her party and acts belligerent, similar to what her mom did when she was younger and things got bad with her dad. These secrets consume Cassie's identity, manifesting negatively. After Rue reveals Cassie and Nate's secret relationship, Cassie tries to deny it, calling Rue a drug addict, as she's afraid to admit the truth to Maddie in fear of losing her trust.
I don't fucking trust you. No one does. Yeah, because you fell in love with someone who spent years making fun of you. It's sad.
Once Nate finally calls Cassie, he tells her to pack up her stuff because she's coming to live with him, and she simply complies. When she does leave, her mother gives her a look and then just lets her go, where she used to be a lot more protective. This demonstrates Cassie's mom giving up on trying to control Cassie and stop her from making bad choices and allowing her the chance to experience from hurt. It's interesting as Cassie escapes her broken household to go to another broken household after Nate's dad leaves. It shows she's in search of a fantasy, while Nate's mom symbolizes that fantasy unfulfilled and the reality of what her and Nate's relationship would eventually become if they were to get married.
Like, my mom always talks about how high school is like this big monumental part of her life, and I cannot imagine being 40 and looking back at this like, wow. Maybe people are nostalgic about high school because it's like the last time in their life that they could dream.
What I wouldn't give to be back in high school.
Yeah.
During Lexi's play that mocks her life, Cassie leaves mid-performance, retreats to the bathroom, and forces a smile through tears, demonstrating her urgent need to hide her vulnerability and remain Nate's perfect girl. There's a flashback to them being intimate where Cassie submits to his control as long as she is loved, revealing her mental illness, but in a way that is still attached to her sexuality. When Lexi's same play embarrasses Nate, Nate can't take it on the chin like Cassie did, and he erupts and leaves the auditorium. Cassie's attempt to follow him and comfort him backfires, prompting Nate to break up with her. It feels like Nate assumed he could control Cassie, but when he saw Lexi's play, he realized that Cassie was a liability because of her sister Lexi's perceptivity that allowed everyone to see the facade of Nate's fake idyllic relationship with Cassie. In response, Cassie becomes enraged and sabotages the play, sparking a chaotic confrontation involving Lexi, their mother, and Maddie, the ensuing mayhem is viewed as part of the play's spectacle and culminates in Cassie retreating to the girls' bathroom, where she reveals that Nate already broke up with her anyway.
Don't worry. This is just the beginning.
Maddie's response to Cassie at the end of everything signifies the cycle of her own mania and depression that the manic pixie dream girl will have to go through before someone like Nate will be satisfied and truly move on. This part brings forth the idea of Maddie also being a manic pixie dream girl for Nate, who he ignored the personhood of in favor of her sexuality. However, in comparison to a character like Cassie, Maddie isn't presented as irrational. There's still one more season of Euphoria, so we'll be able to see if Cassie will be able to develop coping mechanisms outside of submitting to this male fantasy, or if she'll continue to be reduced down to manic hypersexuality. Both Cassies build identities on external approval via relationships, appearances, or burdensome secrets, masking their true selves and deepening internal pain. Their chronic issues reveal that external validation is fleeting and may extend inner suffering. Symbolic acts represent small but pivotal steps towards self-worth, where it be familial neglect like Cassie in Skins or a broken home like Cassie in Euphoria. Both drive each Cassie to find validation elsewhere, rendering emotional pain as a normal part of love. Their desperate need to please leads them into promiscuous behaviors that damage their reputations and redefine their self-image through others' expectations. Moments of self-assertion give way to a gradual acceptance of their eroding personal boundaries, especially under manipulative and emotionally vacant figures. Bearing the weight of personal and familial dysfunction, both Cassies become increasingly isolated, with their self-respect corroding over time. A fatalistic view of love, combined with a longing for the safety of youth, drives them to cling to idealized fantasies, evading the harsher truths of adult life. Societal forces enforcing narrow beauty standards push the complexities of these Cassies into limiting archetypes, while some counter-narratives advocate for more interpretations that explore inner resilience and self-love. New portrayals of girls and women dealing with mental illness can challenge traditional images by exposing the toxicity of reliance on external idealization and highlighting the struggle for genuine self-discovery.